Hey everybody, I am Erica. I am with Bricks Real Estate. Thank you for joining me today. I want to address the elephant in the room for most people that are considering purchasing a house today, which is, should I buy a house at all? Like, is this a good time to do this in fall, winter of 2022 going into 2023? Uh, this feels like a complex question for many of us, especially when we're in what we call a shifting market, which was a red hot, super white hot, red hot seller's market. We had multiple offers. It was just extremely hard to get a house under contract. And if you did, you were paying much more over asking price. You were giving up inspections and some other things like appraisal gaps and some things that people, had never even heard of before because we were competing against so many people for the same property. And now that it is fall, we have had a pretty significant cooling. So I want to look through the data and I want you to, sort of ask yourself some questions, but I'll also ask them as well. So what I have in my mind when a person says, hey, I want to buy a house, great, especially if you were renting. It's to me the greatest way to like start building wealth as an individual or as a family. And so here's the questions I'm asking. What do I believe or know about interest rates today? What do I know and believe about home prices? And then lastly, what is the alternative once I answer these questions? And so we're going to dig into that right now. So let's start with the interest rates component, just to get our head around it. So I don't pretend to be a lender. I work alongside with lenders to help people purchase homes unless they have cash, of course. And so what I know for sure is that we're at a 20-year high for the level of the interest rates. It's not the highest of all time, just in the last 20 years, we're at the highest peak. And like half a minute ago, we were telling people we were at historical lows. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of this swing. So if you weren't out shopping in 2020, 2021, this isn't impacting you as much. Really, the people that have really felt this shift is the people who were shopping before and have started up again. And it's like, whoa, something changed. And so the first question we're going to think about is affordability for ourselves. What is that number? Not interest rate number. What is my number? What is my comfortable number for, if I can speak, for this mortgage? Excluding utilities and excluding car payments and any other bills that I have on my plate. Is it 2,000? Is it 1,200? Where does my number fall? Because that's what's key. And that's what I want you to talk to your lender about. What I've noticed is that lenders get creative depending on the market we're in. So something I saw during the red hot market was I saw businesses pop up that would let you buy a house before you sold a house. And now that necessity is gone. So now we're seeing what's called a 2-1 buy down program. So to help you bring your interest rate down, I've noticed like new construction. This is a great time to buy a new construction house. Whereas like a minute ago, it was on the expensive side. Again, you were competing for the same new construction house. Now you might be able to pick your house, pick your lot, get some sort of bonus or incentive from the builder to help you get that brand new house. So there's some really great things that are coming to play for people that want to buy a house right now that are being overlooked because of this national conversation that interest rates are high. And if that's all you're thinking about, then of course you're closing the book and then this isn't the time to buy. And then of course the next question is, well then when is? When, how does that crystal ball work? And how do you know when the right time to buy is? I am going to share my screen if I can, because I'm not super comfortable with this technology. I don't use it. I mean, I'm a consumer of it, but I can't, I don't even know if I'm sharing my screen. It says I am, so hopefully I'm doing it correct. So what I have up here is hyper local data. And anytime you work with me, I can dig down and I can pop in any city in my InfoSparks software here. And you can see I'm going to do all prices, all types of properties, blah, 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 so forth. Okay, so I've got that all selected. And what I want to show you is when I switch it over to the average Twin Cities region, and I don't exactly know how that's defined, but I want to keep it general because we could do it by Hennepin County or whatever, but I'll just keep it a little bit broader for people in Minnesota. You can see today in October, a house could be like on average 420,000. And if I back up to January of 2019, it was more like 312. Let's go back even further. Let's go 5 years. Okay. So now in 2017, it was more like 273. If I go back max, I can go all the way, 5, it was worth 258. So what I like about this graph is it shows you that bubble that we hit in that 08-09 period. It went up a little bit, went down, and then it's been steadily rising ever since. So we have been really in a seller's market since 2012. A lot of people don't expect me to tell them that, but that is the reality. If we dig down into, let's get into more current data. When you're asking yourself if this is a good time to buy, mentally, a lot of people are back in June, and that's a problem. June is where we saw the interest rates change. That was sort of the moment. You could feel it if you were actively shopping. If you are an active real estate agent, you knew that around that June period, interest rates changed. And look at what happened to home prices. They just kind of gently, not dramatically, but they came from 447 down to 421. Again, this is a generic house. I'm not digging into condos in Shakopee or waterfront on Lake Minnetonka or something. This is just a general overview. And you can see it's going boop, 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 all over the place, because what happens is we don't, if we're a seller, we don't tend to make as much money on a house after June. So even had this interest rate thing hadn't happened, we would have predictably seen this happen anyway. So if you're saying, well, is it a good time? Well, winter just generally is a good time to purchase a house. There is less competition in terms of other people shopping, and there is there's a little less inventory, but that makes it a great time to pick something up. So if I had to guess, this is going to go back up after January. That would be what I would predict. So, and I can only, let's see if I can dig in here. So it's like you see some of this national conversation about, well, year over year, or comparing it to last year. Last year was a different animal. Okay. So trying to compare, let's say August of 22 to August 21, these aren't apples to apples, because that's just not how this always tends to work. But looking at this data, you can see we are dipping down a little. So that means prices are coming down a little bit, and that's good information. And I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing my screen so you can see I don't know if you could see my face before or not. So I was assuming you could. So that's what we know about how home prices is that they're dipping down a little bit, and that's important information. So the third question is, what is the alternative? Okay. So if we think to ourselves, okay, now what do I have left? If I don't buy a house, then I'm renting, right? I guess, or you're living with somebody, and you're probably still paying them some sort of money, I would imagine. So, what does it cost to rent today? Okay, I'm just going to be really generic. I was on Facebook Marketplace earlier. 3-bedroom, 2-bath house to rent is pretty much the same price as a mortgage. Like it's not really like the landlord doesn't look like they're making that much money, I suppose, unless it's free and clear. But without digging into that, minimally, I'm paying $2,000 a month. I'm probably more like paying like $2,500 if I had to, just based off of where I live out in the West Metro. It seems like that's what houses are renting for. So if I rent, it's a little bit harder for me to save up for a down payment, and it doesn't necessarily get me to my goal, which is I truly believe that owning a house is a way to build wealth. I think that that's a very important piece of all of this. And if I could show you like a graph going further back in time to like 1970, you could just basically see it goes up over time. So somebody who bought a house in 1970 isn't generally going to say that was a regret. Like they own it free and clear, and they're going to just make a ton of money on it. So you don't really hear anybody saying like from 50 years ago, oh, I wish I didn't buy a house. Like you just don't hear that conversation. Another thing to consider is I know a big investment company, and they just don't get that hung up on like the actual price. So like whether they get it 5,000 above or below asking, or, even if the number is more significant than that, they're not losing sleep over it, because a true investor understands that the value is the property, not so much like the exact price that they picked it up on. And so I think that that's something I see between people who have never purchased a house before and people who understand wealth or are trying to build wealth, is that it's owning the property that's building the wealth, not exactly like what I paid for it. Of course, nobody wants to overpay. I'm not implying that. Just to conclude this conversation, you're going to get comments from the uncle that lives 3 states away about what they think is going on with the real estate market. The news is currently just flooded with this conversation about what is going on with the real estate market. Keep in mind, they're looking at national averages, which are not helpful. I listen to it all the time. I was listening to Apple News. I was listening to 60 Minutes the other day. It was interesting information. What's happening on the coast happens typically faster than it does in the central part of the United States. So keep that in mind, that like what we're experiencing currently here in the Midwest isn't going to be replicating like what's happening in California, or like Florida just got hit by the hurricane. So like what's happening there is very like particular to Florida. So just kind of like stop and pause when you're hearing these national averages. That's what they are. They're not talking about Minnesota. They're not talking about Minneapolis. And I can dig down into like a very particular city and a very particular market. So if you say to me, like, what's the real estate market like? I can give you a general answer. Anecdotally, I can look at data. But if I'm really getting deep with you, I'm going to say, what are you talking about? Like the condo market downtown Minneapolis? Are you talking about lakefront property? Are you talking about like the average suburban house? Like, what are we talking about? Because I have had properties sell really quickly as of recently, and I've had properties sit with very minimal showings. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the property. Since I am talking to people who are thinking about buying, I don't mean to exhaust the conversation about selling, but they kind of go hand in hand. So we're seeing these houses that are much higher days on market than we're accustomed seeing, like months. Like we're seeing houses sit for months. That is becoming normal. So we also have to be careful about thinking, well, this one's 60 days on market. Like, what's wrong with it? That is not the same conversation that we like a year ago. Again, that would have like been remarkable. It's not remarkable anymore. Days on market has completely changed. Again, another reason why, as weird as it may sound, and I'm not trying to sound salesy or pitchy, it is a great time to buy a house. In fact, if I was going to buy one, I would look before January. If it was me, you have to assume it's going to pick up and change after January. That is just historically, real estate picks up. More houses come on the market, which means more buyers come on the market. So you have to remember your competition level is really low. I'd love to talk to you about facts. I'd love to answer any questions you have. So please feel free to reach out anytime if there's anything I can do to help you with the Twin Cities real estate market. Thank you.